Well, hello, welcome to the channel. My name's Johnny, and you're watching Hillbilly Modeling. So this is going to be part 7, and the final part of our Trumpeter Russian SAM-6 anti-aircraft missile vehicle in 1/35th scale. And in this video, what we're going to be doing is finishing up all the little stuff that we haven't done so far. We've got do some weathering, add a little mud here and there. I'm gonna really look to keep this vehicle really lightly muddied or weathered or whatever there, not heavy at all, because I imagine this type of vehicle probably wasn't, charging through the trees and through the ditch lines and stuff like that. So in keeping with that, we're going to stay really light with the type of weathering that we're going to do on it. And we have to install our tracks. We haven't done that yet. And also we have our missiles to install and our little hoses, the little neoprene type hoses there to cut to length and install for our missiles. So this ought to be very interesting. And then, of course, at the end is the final reveal. So hope you guys stick around for that. So let's go ahead and jump down to the bench and finish this one up. So the first step that we're going to do here is we're going to use Vallejo's thick mud. Now this is an acrylic water-based medium we're going to be using. This particular one is European mud, so it's a light color. And we're going to use that. It's kind of like a paste. So, and of course, if it is too thick, you can always thin it with just a little bit of tap water. Makes it very flexible and concerning, what type of application you want to use. Here we're just going to put it in right around where the road wheel arms come out of the lower hull there, because that part of the road wheel arm is actually visible between the road wheels. And we can also use it to add a little bit of mud where it's collected, say on our fenders there. Try not to build it up too much where it might interfere with the tracks, because you need to keep that in mind. If you put a lot of this acrylic mud in there, you might have an issue when you go to install the tracks. Also, along the bottom edge here of the sponson, I'm just going to put a little bit there and a little bit on that rear mud flap, as you can see. There we go. Kind of hanging down a little bit where it would collect. And of course, next up, we're going to use this Earth Effects by AK. Now this is a mud wash, and this is the lightest one. You can get this in a little kit that has 3 different colors in it, but it is an enamel-based product. So we need to let that thick European mud dry before we add this. This being enamel over top of that water-based acrylic, we want that acrylic to be completely dry. So I'm just going in on the lower hull here, especially where the tracks are going to be in the road arms and what have you. Just add in a little bit of mud. Now I have thinned this mixture about 60% thinner to 40% wash. And we're going to let this dry after we get it on. We're just going right around the bottom and the little splash areas, Like I say, I feel that this vehicle wasn't busting through trees and the brush and stuff, because you do want to protect your missiles as much as you can. So we're just going to go really lightly along the edge here. And since we've thinned it out so much, it kind of gives a kind of a dusty look, which is what we're kind of going for here. Now we don't want to forget our road wheels. These were pressed steel road wheels, so those recessed areas there will collect a lot of dust. So by putting this mixture on and me kind of leaving these road wheels in their horizontal position for drying, kind of ensures that this medium will kind of flow out and even itself out over top of that surface. So while we wait for that to dry, we're going to go ahead and use a little bit of graphite here. So this is just a standard number 2 pencil, and I'm just using my craft knife here to scratch off a little bit of that graphite there, kind of get it into like a fine powder. Now, of course, there are products on the market that you can purchase, but a number 2 pencil is fairly inexpensive. So if you're on a budget, or you're just cheap like I am, you can use these number 2 pencils for really great effect. And what we're going to be doing with this is we're going to be using this to work on our tow cable. So to apply it, I'm going to be using this kind of, I don't know if it's a poly something or another type brush. It's just like a silicone rubber tip, and it will hold the product for us, and then we can really lightly go in and brush over the cable. So this is our tow cable, and the point here is to give us more of a metallic look on that metal cable, because Trumpeter did provide us with this copper cable. And the strands are really fine, so we don't want to be pressing on it really hard with, say, just using the pencil. I mean, you can do that if you want to. Just be careful. We don't want it to distort or flatten it in any way. And as you can see, it kind of gives us a little bit of shine there. I think that looks pretty good. You know, it's always a task to try to get steel cables to look like steel cables. So I think that this is going to work out good for us. Okay, so we're going to go back to our enamel wash here, and I'm using just the enamel thinner to kind of do some streaking here, especially right there around the hull where underneath the sponsons, where you can imagine this mud and water and stuff would, and or dust, would be kind of sticking to the side of the hull here. A few streak effects here and there I think is really going to help out. We're not going to be able to see a whole lot there, but just in case, you know, it would be nice to have something to look at if we can see it. And then when the lighting is just right, you'll be able to actually see it. So by pulling down, we're creating a little bit of that effect. Now, if you look at our road wheels, you can see that those really dried nicely. So one of the problems, though, is that not so much on the hull. So I'm going to use this Tamiya Master Weathering Set A, and it has 3 different colors in there. We're going to pick the lightest one, kind of the sandy dust color there. And I just want to put a little bit of accent there on the side of the hull there where the track's going to be. So we're just kind of try this out. And of course, this enamel base that we put on before and use the enamel thinner on, it is completely dry. I don't really want these to blend together. I just want to blend this over top. That's just kind of how I'm doing it. You can do it any way you want to. So as you can see, you just apply it with the sponge end, and then you can use the brush with the applicator that's provided to kind of blend and pull those pigments down. Now this Tamiya weathering set, these pigments have a little bit of, they're just a little bit pasty. But I did find that sponge doesn't allow us to get in real close to any details. So I switched to a cutoff brush. Just a ratty old messed up paintbrush that's really not good for anything else at this point. But don't throw away your old brushes, because you can always find a use for them. Now this way we can take and stipple in this kind of a pasty powder. You know, it's got a little bit of something in it there that makes it stick really good. So just by going in with the brush and stippling it, we can kind of get and pull it down and smear it. There you go. And so that's a nice two-tone we got going on there with our mud and dust, kind of like the mud's dried out. So I'm going to keep going around the vehicle and taking care of that. Now we can use that same weathering powder there just to come in and highlight that thick mud that we put on in those clumps. So as you can imagine, those clumps, the thinner outer parts are going to dry much faster than the thicker sections. So that adds a little bit of extra dimension in our mud there, and a little bit of dusting along the front there. So that should really help with what it all looks like there, and it's looking pretty decent. So to fix this into place, I find that whenever you're using either dry pigments or even these master sets from Tamiya, it always helps to come in and add just a little bit of thinner on them to set them in place. Now there are pigment, for dry pigments, setters, but I find that this does just as good a job, especially in these areas where you're never going to really handle it, so you don't have to worry about it rubbing off. And we definitely don't want it drying out and falling off on our shelf later on. So now we're going to do a little bit of rust. Now Vallejo has a 4 rust pack and different shades of this new rust, old rust, aluminum, or not aluminum, but iron oxide, old rust. Did I say old rust before? I may have, but so what I've used here is a little painter's palette and put some of those pigments, different shades in there, and I'm just kind of picking out which one I want to use. And we're going to be using this on exposed metal surfaces, such as our spare track section on the back, and especially on our tools. So I'm using water as a carrier, so we're not going to put this on dry. I find that dry pigments can be really messy for me, or maybe I'm just really messy using them. But if I thin these pigments out using water as a carrier, we can kind of just brush over those little shiny areas that we had previously taken and dry brushed over with the flat steel enamel to give it a little bit of used, shiny, worn look. So those areas are going to rust. Also on this grill guard here for our exhaust, this metal gets heated up and moisture gets on it, and causes a little bit of rust. So we'll put it on there, and then we'll go back to our tools here, and we'll do our shovel and our axe as well. And if you get a little bit too much on there, you can always wet your brush with some clean water and come back over top of it. Here I'm just adding a second coat on our saw because it really wasn't as rusty as I would like for it to be. Now once it dries, you can actually, since these are dry pigments, once it completely dries, you can kind of smooth it out and blend it with a dry brush if you need to. Once you get it looking just like you want, we're going to use the same technique here, using a little bit of enamel thinner, and let it just soak right across the surface there, and that'll help fix those pigments into place, and we shouldn't have to worry too much about that coming off. So now it's time to put on our road wheels, and as you can see now the tires are not weathered yet. We're going to do that at the same time that we do the actual track, but we do need to have a clean surface where we're going to be able to cement those length tracks to these road wheels, so we don't want a lot of weathering product on there. So it's really important that, that we double check and make sure that our road wheels are straight, and it's always good to use a straight edge just to make sure that we don't have anything a little, say, wonky and out of place there, and then once we're satisfied with the alignment, I'm just going to come in with a little bit of Tamiya Extra Thin here, and that will set everything for us. Now these wheels do not move, they just simply are stuck onto those pegs, and we don't have a working track, so we're in good shape. Now when it comes to our idler, we'll go ahead and put that into place. Now we're not going to cement it yet. We may have to take it back off. We don't know. Hopefully we don't have too much mud to get our tracks fit. So now when it comes to fitting our tracks, as you can see, there is this rib. It kind of looks like an eyebrow. Well, it kind of points up at the front of the vehicle, which we need to take note of because that determines the direction of these tracks. And once we figure out the front of our track, we can go ahead and put our drive sprocket to the rear section there. Now there is some paint on these items, of course, and it's going to fit a little tight. So we need to kind of press that in and get that aligned. Hopefully we don't break any pieces off. And I'm just pressing it into place. It is a little tight, but it does go in. And we haven't broken the track, so we don't have to fix anything. So that's good. Once we're satisfied that it's fully seated, we're just going to slip our drive sprocket into place there. And then we can, once we get it fully seated, because it has to go all the way up against the final drive housing, just like so. And then we can rotate it and just slip our track in up at the front around that idler. And yeah, I did put just a little bit too much mud in there, but I tried to keep it very thin, so it goes in. So we got lucky there. We didn't have to remove anything as far as that acrylic mud goes, because that acrylic mud really is, I mean, it hardens like cement. So you got to be careful where you put that stuff. So with the top section of track, we just need to get it slid into place and get it over top of our drive sprocket. And there is just enough room to get it in place there over top of the drive sprocket. So I'm just feeding it up, making sure that we get it connected. And once we get it into place there, and it is a really tight, as you can see, I'm kind of struggling with it. It is a really tight spot to get it in over top of the drive sprocket. But I felt that we really need to be able to engage at least one tooth on that drive sprocket with that top run of track to help hold it into place for us there. So with it into place, we can press it down over top of those teeth. So the last link in my section here, it kind of depends upon how you assemble your tracks. Once we get it up in there we go. All right, so what I am doing now is I'm going back in and I am inserting some cut pieces of sponge just to kind of hold the track down into place there, because this track really makes contact over especially the two center road wheels. So we want to make sure that it is setting down. That gives us the right track sag, and these sponges will hold it into place for us so that we can go ahead and cement it. So once we're happy with that, I'm just going to use some To Me Extra Thin to set our tracks. I mean, if you really are worried about it, you can use the really thin CA glue and let it flow in. Just be very careful with that stuff, because you can don't use it around those sponges because that would cement those sponges into place. So speaking of the medium CA glue, we're going to be using that to secure our log into place. And I'm just going to use a toothpick or cocktail stick, whichever you prefer, to put that medium CA glue into place. And then we can take our log, and you can see on this trumpeter log, it's actually on the underside, it's hollow, but it does have two little points there to help you locate it. So we'll just set it down into place there and press it down. Make sure it's setting on those brackets. Nothing worse than having a floating log, so we don't want that. Next up, we do have, this is the carrier, and off to the right side is that little extra tray. So we don't want to put this on backwards. So make sure that you go back and refer to your diagram, that you don't put it on backwards. I'm going to use a little bit of CA glue there, the same medium CA glue for attaching it. and it kind of hinges over. Now, since we're going to be displaying it in the firing position, this tilts back out of the way. That way the actual turntable and the missiles can rotate without making contact with it. So that's the angle that it needs to be at if we're going to be in the firing position. Now, if you are building this kit with the missiles in the stowed transport position, it would be vertical. Next up, let's go ahead and put our tow cable on. And it is a little bit tighter fit than when we dry fitted it before painting, but that's okay. It still fits. It is just a little tighter because paint, paint does have a thickness. So I am having to use my tweezers, as you can see, and kind of torque it around to get it onto that other toe lug. But using my fingers, once we get it set into place, we can just press it down, and there it's going to pop into place. And now all we're going to do is kind of tweak our copper cable a little bit. We want to be very careful, though, that we're not removing any paint, because I really don't want to do a touch-up at this point. And I do need to get it over top of that little center T-piece there. And I'm using a toothpick to do that. I just kind of was hesitant to try to use tweezers. I didn't want metal contact there on that copper cable. I didn't want to chip it. So that looks pretty good. So next we need to affix our missiles, and I'm going to use Tamiya's thick cement for that. And as I'm not going to use that brush as an applicator, I'm going to use a cocktail stick. So we do have this little T attachment here that slides into our rails there for firing or holding the missile into place. Not for firing it, but for holding it. And we need to slide that little T down in between those rails. Being careful, as careful as we can, we need to pull it all the way back. Now there's a lug on the bottom rear of the missile where that glue, the Tamiya cement, is going to sit. So we just want to make sure that our missile is fully back. And here's that lug that I'm talking about. And that's going to sit in the very back rail, or in between the rails at the end of the missile firing rail. That's a lot of rails there, isn't it? So once again, just a little bit of cement there. And these do fit rather tight. Just get them slid down into place, and then we want to make sure that they're fully seated. And that's important because there are two little connections on the bottom of each missile. They have to align with a slot. And we'll see those slots later on when we go to put our hoses into place. So here we are with all three missiles installed. And yeah, that looks pretty good. Now I do want that to set up. So moving on, go back to our instructions. We've already installed our missiles. And what we're looking at now is those hoses. Now Trumpeter shows this elaborate bend and everything. I really don't think that I'm going to be able to do that. These neoprene hoses are, I think it's neoprene, I don't know, but it is a kind of a soft rubbery material. Now, as you've seen there in the instructions, it's supposed to be 26 millimeters long. So I've put a piece of tape on my steel ruler here so that I don't have to search for that measurement, and that I can make sure that I don't accidentally cut one, too long, too short, just right. So we'll cut us a couple of those off, and we can do some test fitting. So here I've already put one on, as you can see there, and here you can see where that little piece of hose is supposed to slide in between that little fork on the rail itself, and then it goes over that little pin that's on the bottom of the missile. So once you get that on, we'll slide it around, or bend it around rather, and then slide it onto the next pin. And these little bitty pins, I haven't broken any, but I'm afraid that if I torque or push any of that, that might happen. And as you can see here, we have that guard bracket that's kind of in the way on our outside missiles. So I think I'm just going to have mine go towards the outside because of that angle. You see that angle there? Yeah, I don't really want to push or pull those hoses in close because I don't want to break those little pins off. Because that would just create another problem. We would have to replace that, drill it out, and put a piece of wire or something there because there's really nothing else there to hold these hoses into place. So we're just going to kind of thread that around and see what it looks like. This is test fitting, and I do recommend that you test fit so that you get a good idea of how things are going to go together. Especially before we commit to any kind of cement. And in this particular case, we're going to have to use CA glue to hold these into place because regular, say, Tamiya Extra Thin or something is really not going to hold on to the material that these hoses are made out of. So yeah, I kind of want to keep the same profile, the same bow there for those hoses. So yep, we're going to have to go around that bracket. So that's the way I'm going to do mine. Of course, you know, when you build yours, you can do it any way you like. And here's that medium cement, CA cement, CA glue, whichever. So that's what we're going to be using to affix all of our hoses. So I've went ahead and cemented all these into place. And they all have the same profile. They look identical from one missile to the other, so I'm not terribly disturbed over that the outer ones going around that bracket there. So I think it's going to be fine. Let me know in the comments if you think I made the right choice or not. I just didn't want to break off those little bitty plastic nubs there and not have anything to hold our hoses in place. So let's go back to our lower hull here. Now that we've cemented this up and it's had time to dry, we can go ahead and pull out the foam sponge, and then of course I had a little toothpick there wedging it down in the front on this one side. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do to make sure that you got a good connection. But the tracks fit really well, so I'm kind of happy with that. So we're going to go back to our Earth Effects by AK here, and that's that dark earth that we used before. It's the same mixture, and we're going to use that on our tracks. So since it is mixed so thin, you may have to put 2 coats on, but that's okay. You know, the enamel thinner that we've used will really set off quickly. But this allows us to go ahead and muddy up those tracks, and since it's mixed so thin, it's really going to collect into all those little crevices and everything along the track surface. And we don't want to forget the front and rear runs of the tracks as well. And now we can go back in and kind of dirty up those tires that are on our road wheels. Now remember, we didn't put any of these weathering materials on there before because we needed a good clean contact surface to cement our tracks into place. So next, there are going to be some areas that are a little bit shinier than the rest of the vehicle. One of those being, say, these grab handles here. And we're just going to use our number 2 pencil to come in and to kind of show some wear where the paint has been worn completely through to the bare metal, and the graphite pencil, this just a standard number 2 pencil, same one we used earlier, will help us do that. Now you can apply it the same way with that soft rubber type brush, or in this case, since I don't have to worry about distorting anything, since the plastic tends to be a little bit firmer. So, and I am going in and we're just doing these areas where I kind of had trouble getting this cable on. Well, I imagine the crew would have had trouble too when they went to wrap that cable. So that's a good guide for little shiny spots. So back to our enamel thinner. With that enamel product on our tracks, it kind of masked the dry brushing that we did, and I do want that to come through, and that's those shiny contact areas there on the track. So we're just going to come through and kind of wipe off just the surface of it there, cleaning it up a little bit so we can see that flat steel dry brushing that we did on the tracks in the previous video. And it cleans up easy with a cotton bud and a little bit of enamel thinner. Just want to make sure that you don't get any little fuzzies stuck to it. Now once that dries, I didn't quite like the fact that it didn't really pick up the light and we didn't get any reflectivity there. So back to the number 2 pencil, and we can just add a little bit of emphasis to it there on the edges. Makes it more visible. Not that they were highly visible, but it really helps. So we'll go ahead and do these track links here, especially the front and the rear of the vehicle, just to add that little extra something there. And since we're in the mood of using our pencil, we can go along the side of the tracks here, right on the edges, and add just a little bit of, that raw steel glint right on the edge of each of the track links. And it goes really quick, as you can see. It doesn't take but a moment to do. And you don't want to miss, going around the drive sprockets and things like that. So that's going to really help in the end. So the only thing left to do is to set our turntable and launcher into place with our missiles. Well, there we go. Everything fits. That's good. And so there we are. We're all finished with the kit. Now, just to give the kit a quick overall review, we had a little fit issue back in the beginning, fitting our road wheels to 6 of the road wheel arms, which was easy to fix with a little bit of sanding. And then your basic cleanup, not a problem. The other major fit issue that we had was those 3 launch rail assemblies. The bottom plate for them was actually a little bit too long, and we had to cut and trim that down. So other than that, it's just basic model fitting, so that was pretty good. The rest of the model went together well, and I'll say that the tracks really went together very well. I didn't have any real issues at all after painting them and then putting them on the vehicle there in the final steps. So that was good. And of course, this model can be displayed with the missiles in the firing position or in the stowed position, but you really don't have an option to do both because those little clamps and stuff that hold the missiles down, they don't have regular pins and stuff in them, so you kind of have to cement those into place in whichever mode that you want. And I decided, of course, to do our vehicle with the missiles in a launch position. So I am pleased with how our SAM-6 anti-aircraft missile vehicle has come out. It's an enjoyable kit to build, other than the aforementioned fit issues that we did have, but those are easily taken care of. Just spend a little time and take your time. Take plenty of time when you're building. Now, all the techniques that I used in building this kit are really simple techniques, just step by step, overlaying of one process over the other, and I think it really came out really good. I like the tonal variation that we managed to achieve here, and the weathering effect as well, because it's really light. So I think it looks pretty good. Of course, you guys are going to let me know what you think, and I'd love to hear from you. Make sure you leave me a comment and let me know what you think of the build. So I guess that will wrap up this build, and special thanks to all my subscribers. It's because of you guys that I keep making these videos, and I hope that you enjoyed this one, and I hope that you enjoyed this build series. And for those of you that are new to the channel and are not subscribers, I hope today I earned your subscription. And there are plenty more builds on the channel from past kits that we've done, so feel free to go look at those. Plenty out there for you to see. And we're going to continue building. And yeah, that's going to wrap it up. So thanks a lot, guys, and stay safe, and I'll see you next Friday.